Welcome to episode 259 of Sports Geek. On this week's episode, I chat with Phoenix Suns CIO Steve Reese about sports technology and how sleep is transforming performance on and off the court.
Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who once wore an inflatable sumo wrestling suit under his guise of halftime entertainment, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, my name is Sean Callanan. You can find me on all platforms, social media, at Sean Callanan, and you can find the podcast at sportsgeekhq.com and on all good podcasting platforms. Yes, I did don an inflatable suit many years ago in front of, I think, 15,000 people at a basketball game at Melbourne Park, now known as Rod Laver Arena. And I tell you, it is hard work trying to move in those giant inflatable sumo suits. And you can try to coordinate a fight as best you can, but when you get on your back, it is really hard to get up. But the things we do to promote sport and get the fans involved, I'm sure a lot of you have similar stories and you've donned, if not an actual sumo suit, a mascot suit, or done something that might be seen as embarrassing, but it's all part of the world of sport. Today's guest is Steve Reese. He's CIO of the Phoenix Suns, and we talk about his career in the world of sport and sports technology and how technology has changed, but then also talk about what he's been doing in the world of sleep with the Phoenix Suns. But before I get into that episode, just a quick promo for the Patreon campaign. If you listen to this podcast and you've got this far and you've listened before, hopefully you're getting some value. And if you're getting some value, I'd love you to become a Patreon of Sports Geek. Why support us? The Patreon campaign is to support the costs around the sports business content that we produce across emails and these podcasts. And the podcasts that come out Friday, the new Q&A podcast, they help pay for the all the essentials that are required. James, my podcast editor, Jolie, that helps with the show notes and booking guests and the like. So if you enjoy the podcast, please check it out. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon as a personal supporter. It's $4 a month, which is less than a cup of coffee. But if you are a sponsor, if you would like to sponsor the podcast, this is the best way to do so. You will be able to reach the podcast audience, and your logo and link will be in every single Sports Geek podcast show notes, and also Sports Geek News, which you can get by going to sportsgeekhq.com/SGN. Well, that's enough for this. For those of you who have become Patreon subscribers, thank you very much. And now here is my chat with Steve Reese from the Phoenix Suns. Very happy to have a good friend of mine, Steve Reese, the CIO of the Phoenix Suns. Welcome to the podcast, Steve.
Hey, wonderful to be here today. Thanks for inviting me.
No problems. Now, we know each other via various attendance of the Seed Conference, which is obviously the place to go where you're a sports technologist. How did you get your start in the sports business and the technology area of sport?
Yeah, I started with the Houston Oilers football team back in 1990, so that places me in the old-timer category. When I started in 90, I was working for an accounting firm, and we were doing some consulting with the Houston Oilers. Yep. And at the time, they had lost every bit of their data. They hadn't backed up in 2 years. They lost all their customer data.
Oh, wow.
And the interesting thing is that Warren Moon, who was our quarterback at the time, the Cleveland Browns had a game analysis system where what they had detected through it is every time they blitzed Warren, he had a tendency to turn left. So I really honestly can thank Warren Moon for his tendency to turn left, because what it did is started kind of a response by the Oilers to say, hey, they're beating us based on technology. And so we had to counter that. And at the time, there were only 5 other technologists in the world in the sports genre, from everything that I can tell. Yep. And so I ended up being number 6, and they were all in the NFL. And so it was, a wonderful way to start, but it's amazing to see that it just started coming into being, where technology played a role in Cleveland beating the Oilers. And now we look at it, and oh my goodness, how many people are out there that do the same job that I have? So it was special in the day, and it's still special today, but it's a very normal thing. And back in that time, it was not.
And so that was as sports started to see the value of technology, the value of IT, the value of backing up. I mean, the amount of times the IT and that everyone wants to be a friend of a geek when there's a disaster. It's like, guys, prepare for the disaster, and you don't need it. And so that was pretty much where you started. You cut your teeth. You were at the Oilers, and then they became the Titans. So you were part of that move.
Yeah, it was part of the move. So, that was something. I will tell you what, when I look back at my career and what were some of the biggest accomplishments or things that I had weathered, just relocating a franchise, I have got to tell you, it was tough.
Yeah.
We ended up with the Oilers over the 2 years that we relocated to Tennessee. In a 1 year period, we had office moves of 50 or more people over a 15-month period. And at that time, naturally, because IT wasn't what it is today with a lot of the organizations, I was a one-man band.
Yeah.
And so it was just wonderful, to arrive in Tennessee. Just what a wonderful part of the country. And so the move for us was really good. It was great for the family and everybody else. But boy, let me tell you what, I think I only have one of those in my bag during a lifetime. But after that, that's it. But it was a wonderful move to Tennessee.
Yeah, nothing identifies where there's problems than moving everything.
Oh my goodness! Well, what we had to do is whenever we moved from city to city, we were between 5 or 6 moves within Houston itself.
Yep.
We had a couple of moves to Memphis. We had several moves within Nashville itself. We had to tear down and be up within 24 hours. And so after you do 15 of these, I got pretty darn good at it. But I don't recommend it for everybody. But it was probably a driver. Later on that we talk about sleep, but it was probably a big driver for that.
Yeah.
Because the industry is hard.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times the focus is on players, but there's also so many people behind the scenes that are just working their tails off that most people just don't see when they're watching the game. And that was one of those things that was huge on the backside, but very, very unnoticed.
And so you've worked in NFL, but you've also worked at a couple of MLB franchises, also working in the IT technology side.
Yeah, I was at the Houston Oilers, Tennessee Titans for about 11 years. And then I had left to start my own business. And what I had done is there was a automotive group within the U.S. that was starting up called Christian Brothers Automotive. And so I had left to open up a store, which was in Nashville. And, honestly, a lot of it was that I just wanted to know what it was like to be an owner of a business, to know if I had what it took to help generate revenue and operate a business and make payroll and have it thrive and have good customer service. And so I did that for about 7 years, was very successful. The business is still operating, very well today. But, I just had missed the collaborative effort of what occurs in sports and what once you dip your toe in the water and, you're part of a team. Nobody really woke up in the morning wondering how Christian Brothers Automotive did, over the last, day. But everybody wakes up in the morning, they open the sports page and they want to see what the team did. So that led me back to Houston with the Houston Oilers. And there I started as their director of IT and was there for close to about 6-7 years. And then at that point, I moved on to become vice president of technology for the San Diego Padres. We're there for 2, and then moved on to the NBA and the Phoenix Suns, and been here for going on my 7th season right now. So it's pretty much a whirlwind between 3 different sports.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to get, I guess, almost touch all the bases of most of the major sports in the US. You're now at the Suns, and one of the reasons we wanted to catch up, you intimated before about sleep. Yeah, tell us a little bit about the Phoenix Suns Sleep Boot Camp and how it came about and why it's been a big project for you recently.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I had a case about 2.5 years ago, close to 3 years now, where our head athletic trainer, he's now at the Pelicans, Aaron Nelson, wonderful guy, one of the most progressive trainers in the NBA, and I'd say even in all professional sports. And he's really prolonging the career of a lot of people that were toward the end of their career, like Steve Nash and Shaquille O'Neal and folks like that. And Grant Hill, exactly. So he came to me one day and said, I need to fix 2 problems. I need to fix sleep and I need to fix fat. And so at that point, I was just digging into a lot of weird technology, which is part of trying to be an innovator. You just want to just keep your mind open to a lot of things. And so he said, begin to dig into this and see what's up. And so with that, I had my own struggles with sleep. And so this ended up being a wonderfully selfish project to work on. I didn't mind helping him, but this honestly was being motivated by myself and just realizing the toll that the long hours takes on me. So Aaron and I went down the road and we had tested close to 20, 30 different products. We did everything from cranial electrical stimulation to I would have 5, 6 trackers on me at any one point in time. I went through hypnosis. I went sensory deprivation tanks, everything. So with all that being said, we had tried a number of things. And so I struck a deal with Aaron and I said, tell you what, whatever we do for the players, what I want to be able to do is to also use that for the front office.
Okay.
I want to be included in any group. So if you help me, I'll help you. So down the trail we went, just beginning to investigate just what's available and honestly just how deep the problem was in U.S. culture. And that's how it all started.
And so, I mean, that's where a lot of the high performers are looking for that edge, and guys like Aaron are looking for that, for a tiny edge on the court. How is it accepted in the front office? Because it's a little bit IT meets HR. Like, was there pushback, or like how was it accepted? I mean, you obviously had your own personal reasons to be included in the group, but was it, how was it accepted by the front office and staff?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question because, nowadays what happens when you're a technologist, right now we're kind of faced, as an IT group, we're kind of faced with a couple of challenges. Traditionally, and I believe this is changing, but traditionally with a lot of organizations, what they do is say, well, keep the lights on, keep the systems running, but don't get involved in what I'm doing. Let me do my business, which I get. The other thing that comes along is the idea of being an innovator. But when you're an innovator, I'm not quite sure people will understand when they ask you to be an innovator what that means. Because when you really ask about it, it's a matter of, well, I just want some cool stuff. Tell me something I don't know, and that sort of thing.
It's bright shiny.
Yeah, it is. Give me something shiny, but I don't quite know what that is. So what I began to look at was the fact that you've got to come up with what I would just deem as sustainable innovation. What are those practical things that are right under your nose that maybe we're doing a process a little bit off for this, that, and the other? But the hazard with being an innovator is that when you are successful, then yay, that's great. But in order to be successful, you're going to run through a lot of different failures along the way. And so when you innovate and you embark on something like sleep, I would say that initially there was just a lot of eyebrows raised, looking at me thinking, well, are you kind of crazy? This isn't that big of a deal. But the more we dug into it, Aaron and I found that it's a major problem within our organization, and it's a major problem everywhere. I mean, this is just not a Phoenix Suns problem, but it's a big one. And what we discovered is that close to 50% of all Americans get fewer than 8 hours of sleep. And the minimum should really be somewhere between 7 and 8. Within the U.S. culture, 30% are chronically sleep deprived. 30% of the culture is chronically sleep deprived, where they get 6 hours or fewer of sleep. And so within that framework, we began to look at our organization to say, let's really look at the 30%. And when we began to look at starting this first boot camp, I had a show of hands out of the 21 people that started the first one. And I said, okay, how many people have slept on average over the last 30 days? 6 hours. Not a single hand went up. How many slept 5.5? One hand went up. All the rest of the hands that were up in the air for 5 hours or fewer hours of sleep. So with that, what we wanted to do is to really focus on that group that had 5 hours or fewer. I was 5 hours or fewer every night, honestly. And Aaron Nelson, who was our trainer, was somewhere between the 3 to 4 hour a night sleep. So what we wanted to do is to just really dig hard into that demographic, which I'm just going to guess. When you look at sports in general, and let's just take arena sports, because you have more activities than just the sport itself. You have all sorts of events, concerts, and stuff like that. I would say the number is probably a little bit higher in the 40% range. And so with that come a host of potential medical issues that are down the line. And so being selfishly speaking, so I'm going to raise my hand here. When you're getting fewer than 6 hours of sleep a night, you're going to consume somewhere in the range of about 200 calories or more a day. And that ends up being somewhere in the range of about 15 to 20 pounds a year. And so, when I looked at that, that was the first thing that I was like, oh, my goodness. And then for a male, your testosterone levels are going to reduce to the point where it's going to equal somebody who is 10 years older. So at the time we started, how was I? 57. So I was operating like somebody who is nearly 70 years old. And I would say because I was sleeping 5 hours or less a night, I was probably, testosterone-wise, 70 years old or older. And so with that, I began to think, okay, holy mackerel, we need to take a look at this and begin to look at just all the different side effects that can take place. So for Aaron and I, then the mantra became, let's change the culture. And the one guy who had a huge impact on me is a neuroscientist out of UC Berkeley. His name is Matt Walker. And he's written a wonderful book called Why We Sleep. And I would recommend, if anybody wants to learn anything about sleep, it's a very easy read. I would recommend getting that book. But in Matt Walker's book, he just really addressed a lot of different issues, what becomes a risk for all of us. And so, he points out that your cancer risk jumps by 70%. Your caloric intake gets higher. But then when it comes to us as employees and comes to players, things like time to physical exhaustion drops by 30%. Yeah. So if you're working an event, are you tuckered out by 7 o'clock at night and the game is going till 10? If you're a player, are you gassed by the third quarter as opposed to the fourth quarter? And so those are things that we began to take a good serious look at, because it not only affected the players, but it equally affects the staff.
Yeah, I mean, I did read an article recently about that is one of the key problems with the NBA, with the travel and from a player's point of view, being in different cities. And again, it's also the coaches. The game finishes at 10 or 11, you're back at the hotel, your body doesn't get ready for sleep until 1 or 2, and again, you're up at whatever hour to be on a train or be on a plane to get to the next venue. So,
well, Sean, that's a really good point, because back when I first started in the NFL, the average life expectancy of an NFL coach was right around 65 years old. Yeah. And I honestly believe, and I'm not sure if those statistics have been compiled since then, but I honestly believe that a lot of those were dictated by sleep. It really becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where a lot of the coaches were like, well, I'll sleep when I die. Yeah. Chances are is that your mortality rate just drops, when you're not sleeping like that. But another factor, and this was the one where Aaron and I were determined we wanted to change the culture for good. And that was when it comes to your, how cooperative employees are. Yep. So what happens is that when you're, getting less sleep, then you have a part of your brain called the amygdala, and it's basically your emotional center. And when you're getting, 6 or fewer hours of sleep, your amygdala, your emotional, your fight or flight center is going to end up being 60% more active. So Steve Reese, I wake up and I have 5 hours of sleep. Steve Reese is 60% more emotional, which for me, I really don't need to be any more emotional than what I am. I think I'm off the charts a little bit. However, your prefrontal cortex, or your ability to apply the brakes and not act like an idiot, ends up being 70% less effective. So not only are you more emotional, but your ability to stop yourself from an emotional outburst or being snarky or whatever you want to say ends up putting you in a really bad position. And so that to me was the thing that kind of pushed it over the top for me, is that as far as my attitude and how I operated at work and my happiness and my weight and everything else, I just thought it was a good thing for me to try on myself. And as people began to see the difference, I was changing physically. Yep. I was changing in my outward actions. People began to say, hey, what in the heck are you doing? And I said, you're not going to believe this, but all I'm doing is sleeping. Yeah.
And so, I mean, sleep is far more complex than most people think. It's not just going to bed and getting up in the morning. Like, there's different problems around sleeping, whether it's I can't get to sleep at night, I wake up in the middle of the night, there's really restful deep sleep and interrupted sleep.
Mm-hmm.
How do you because it is a third of our life, or it should be, as you're sort of saying. Where do you start tackling the problem?
Yeah, that's a good one because, everybody's sleep problems are just slightly different. They're a little bit unique to who they are.
Yeah.
And so what we did is we really attack it from two different directions. The first one we have is that, what does it take to get to sleep?
Yep.
And so when we first start our boot camp, we pass out a box that has, I'm going to say, about 20 different items in there that are to be used just depending on what people's issues are. So one of the things we do is the front end of the problem is, how do I fall asleep? So what we begin to do is give people the tools and the pointers to say, how do I do that more effectively? So some of it's free stuff. It is make sure you don't drink coffee after noon. Coffee has a half-life of 5 hours, so if I'm drinking coffee at noon, it's still in my system until 10 o'clock at night. So I begin to, and our participants begin to prepare for sleep at about 11, 12 o'clock. And what they do is they don't drink coffee. They make sure that, they'll try to get in some sort of exercise before the end of the day. Yep. We don't want to do that too close to sleep. So exercise is a part of that. Another part is that we have blue light filtering glasses that we give everybody. So when I get home at night after exercising, I pop on these glasses. You can hardly see my eyes, but it filters the blue light. And then what that does is begin to encourage melatonin production in my system. And basically melatonin is just somewhat of the town crier that tells my body, hey, time to go to sleep. Hey, shut the system down. And so between, giving people simple free advice like go to bed consistently, coffee reduction, no alcohol, 3 hours or more before bedtime, try to reduce that. All those things have allowed, I would say, good to 50 to 75% of our participants to fall asleep much faster than what they were. But I'm going to back up just a second here. Yeah. Because one of the things that is a big, big issue is sleep apnea. Okay. And so what we did is we partnered with a local company here in Scottsdale that has an app called Drowsel. And so the first thing we'll do is when we kick the boot camp off is we will encourage everybody to sleep in a bed by themselves and let Drowsel listen to their breathing. And then what it does is a initial assessment of whether they're a candidate for sleep apnea. And it listens to the breathing and analyzes stuff, and then they have a chief medical officer on the other side that will get back to them and say, hey, you may have an issue. Let's talk about how to guide you to your doctor in order to get some assistance. 30% of the worldwide population, and it doesn't matter whether you're in great shape or out of shape, but 30% of the population have sleep apnea. So that's really the first place we start. And then we begin to give a lot of tips and the tools in the box to begin to let them learn how to fall asleep faster. And then we have other products that we use that if you're like me, I was a wake up at 3, 4 in the morning, stressed out sort of guy. Yeah, that's me. What tools to use there to get back to sleep? And so we have a product called New Calm that we've used. And it is a wonderful product that uses electromagnetic stimulation on the wrist. And then you listen to binaural beats. And then what that does is put you back into a REM state of sleep for a couple hours. And so with all those tools, and what it does is the more you reduce your anxiety over sleep, it just seems like then people begin to relax and truly, utilize the time that they have while they're in bed.
So do you think working with someone like Aaron and effectively rolling out this program for professional athletes that have a majority of their life tracked and also have success indicators that show, they're playing better, performing better, shooting better, all of these things that are tracked, helped you in your process to also do it in the front office and to put some of that tracking in place? Again, not to the level of detail. We're not checking your free throw percentage or anything like that. But if you're tracking that, this is how much I'm sleeping, this is how I'm feeling. Like, was there what kind of tracking were you doing to say, well, this is working? Because like you can just say, I feel better, but there's nothing better than saying, oh, I felt better 7 days in a row, and you start seeing different progress. What were you tracking in the front office and sort of bringing some of that sports high performance into the program?
Yeah, so there's kind of two ways we've done this. It's evolved a little bit because, naturally our first boot camp, we had one set of things we did. And then after that, we're slowly evolving it. And so The first thing we do is just do subjective measures.
Yep.
You tell us, are you feeling better? How much are you yawning before noon? How much coffee are you ingesting? All these sort of, indicators that would tell us maybe something's working. Within the Drowsel app, what we're starting to do is they also have I don't know what you want to call it, but kind of a reaction time piece of that. So then after people go to sleep and wake up, wait for about an hour or so, and then they've got this reaction app that you can work on, and you record the number of hours you slept, and then it matches that with your reaction time.
Okay, so it's a little bit like the concussion testing that they do to say, well, this is your baseline, and if you're getting better or worse.
Yeah, right on. Because and so you can objectively see, is this helping or is this not helping? And what we're finding, and I was a great example of this, as I began to lose weight, and I really honestly did not operate any differently than just sleeping. Yep. But I would say my workouts were better because I had more energy. I drank less coffee just because my palate honestly changed because I didn't feel like I needed it. My dietary habits changed because I was sleeping more, and so I tended to have less fatty foods and stuff like that. And as people begin to see these changes within themselves, then it spirals, and they just keep pushing it and going further and further. But to your original point on how was a lot of this taken in the front office, and how do you track and how do you build? Honestly, it's a ground war. You've got to do it one person at a time and win them over one at a time, because early on there was skepticism about it. Mm-hmm. But as time has gone on, it's built and has kind of moved on with players. These are young guys that have all sorts of energy. Yep. And some just feel like, I'm going to be fine. But really the case is that they're not. And, based on an NBA survey and Andre Iguodala, who's with the Golden State Warriors, there was a test done with him where they looked at how did he perform with 8 or more hours of sleep. And we ended up having, minutes played increased by 12%, points per minute increased by 29%, 3-point percentage increased by 2%, free throw percentage by 9%. So all of these things, you begin to look at objectively, but I think it's a little bit that, that'll never happen to me. But I'm telling you, the proof is in the pudding that as people have experienced it and had periods of restfulness, you really don't want to go back to the way you used to be, because you're just really a much happier person all the way around. So as you said, you've done the pilot project and it's evolving. How do you see this? Do you see this being embedded in the Suns as another part of the business that is that both staff and players are expected to, is probably the wrong term, but it's another opportunity for them to better themselves and those kind of things. What's the program going to look like going forward? Yeah, so by the time we hit March 1st, at that point, we're going to have close to 45 graduates of the program. Okay. What I see from a number standpoint is that we're building a lot of momentum, and I find that what I believe will eventually happen is that we're going to look at this as our competitive advantage as far as recruitment, and people are going to truly understand when they come to the Phoenix Suns, it's not just about working in a cool sports job, but we also care about you personally and turning you into the best you. Yep. Selfishly speaking, on the money side, what we're seeing, industry standard numbers that are coming out are saying the people who have treated or people who don't have treated sleep apnea will cost the company about $3,500 more a year in medical benefits. And so I think we have this wonderful positive two-edged sword. Not only can we turn you into a better person, but we could end up shaving, as far as the Phoenix Suns are concerned, we could end up shaving close to $500,000 just off our cost of medical per year. And that may be the difference between, do we raise our rates or do we not raise our rates? Yep. If the program was applied all the way through the NBA, that would end up being millions that we would save. So what I see is I see it becoming a staple within our organization. But also what I'm beginning to see is we are now, with our global partnership group, our marketing partnership group, are beginning to roll this program out with our partners themselves. Okay. So we've got our own partners who have caught wind of the program, and what they're saying is, hey, can you help us? We also have a problem. And so that ends up being a wonderful value add. to any of our partners that without it costing them a dime, they can have, take advantage of some of the sleep science that we've discovered here in the sports field and then apply it to our own front office. So we're eating our own cooking, and then we can also help them with it as well. So I see it expanding, honestly, on a much larger scale.
Yep.
It just has taken time for people to see the results, feel the results, and say, okay, I've bought in. And that's where we're trending to right now.
Yeah, there's some really good upside there, especially the exporting effectively the innovation that you're driving at the Suns and saying, well, how can we help our partners? And effectively what you were saying before about, the Suns on the court have long been a place where players would effectively go to because they want to be rehabbed and they've rebuilt careers, right? And Steve Nash, Grant Hill, Shaq, and all of those guys spoke so highly of what Aaron was doing there, and sort of effectively rebuilding them. If you've got that same, if you've got that same reputation in the front office for, how you're feeling about it and what you're achieving in your job, it's only going to be a big win. But I think it is falling into that employee wellness piece and understanding if you've got happy and healthy employees, it's definitely a big one for the bottom line.
Yeah, and the important thing for us too has been it's been a really rough 10 years.
Yep.
Team has not performed well. We've struggled on the court, and naturally, when you struggle on the court, you struggle a little bit off the court. Just because everybody wants to be part of that winner, you want to, it just uplifts the office and everything else. And I kind of feel like through my years in sports that when the front office is just a little bit better, it just has a profound impact on the sports. And the difference between winning and losing is a lot of times just inches or fractions of an inch.
Yep.
And so as a front office, and you've seen many more teams than I have, but when a front office is together and a front office, they're all rowing in the same direction, it makes you as a team just a little bit better. The players feel it through the trainers, through the equipment guys, through the coaches. You mentioned coaches not sleeping enough. I mean, that's a huge one. I had a funny incident back in 2000. So I was with the Tennessee Titans. We go to Super Bowl 34, lost to the Rams. It's that point, St. Louis Rams.
Yep.
And so I had my end of the year meeting with a bunch of the coaches. And so I sat with our defensive coordinator at the time. And so we had done a bunch of stuff that year. And so one of the things we'd done is put this big fancy video system in that had saved the coaching staff and our video staff hundreds of hours in just slicing and dicing video. So I asked Greg Williams, who was our guy at the time, and I said, so what have we done good? What have we done bad? And the thing that he pointed out good was, he goes, I just got so much better sleep because of that video system, because it did so much work that I used to have to stay in the office to do, that I went home and slept. And he said the end result was I just felt like I coached better. I related to our players better. And that thought had stuck into my mind for years and had never lost. And so I was honestly mad at myself when I headed down this trail and discovered how well it worked on me, because I'm like, I was given that answer 18 years earlier and just had failed to act on it. And in a world where everybody's looking for low-hanging fruit, let me tell you, this is the low-hanging fruit. There's not much out there. This is right in front of our very eyes. And this is something that every organization, whether you're in sports or not, can do in order to take their culture and flip it upside down and have really some of the most focused, happy employees on the planet. It
is a culture flip, though, because normally when someone gets an hour back, they see it as a way to fill it with other things. And they don't never think that sleep is the thing that they should use that hour for.
And, I had somebody when we kicked off our current boot camp a couple of weeks ago. And so we're kicking it off and we're passing stuff out. And I had this gal look at me and she goes, Steve, what did you notice? Like, what did you notice in yourself? She goes, everybody could see the change in you physically. I mean, I'd lost 25 pounds. I lost close to 6% body fat. And for a 59-year-old to have 9% body fat, I'm like pretty darn proud of that. That's exciting. Yeah. I'm going to hold on to this as long as I can. But she said, what was the biggest change that you noticed? And I said, my ability to handle interruptions and re-engage in my work. So I said, prior to this, after I gauged to figure that I had an interruption every 8 minutes or less. And so when somebody knocks on my door and says, hey, Steve, can I talk to you about something? I turn to them, then go back to my work. Yep. Well, every time you go back, and I believe Microsoft even came up with a number on this, that every time you're interrupted, it takes you anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes to
get back
re-engage
into the
fully.
task. Yeah.
Right, to get back to it. And I told her, I said, you know what? My ability to happily engage with the person that's coming to my office and then turn and focus and pick back up within about a minute or two, I've got to tell you, that's what I noticed. And so I think just from a standpoint of being able to handle the constant interruptions we all deal with, that in itself made it well worth it.
So if there's people listening that are probably nodding their head going, yes, I have 5 or 6 hours sleep a night, what would you say should be their first steps if they wanted to correct their sleep and I guess claw back some of that sleep debt that they're probably racking up?
Yeah, the first thing I would do is I would make sure that they verify that they do not have obstructive sleep apnea.
Okay.
We ended up having a very high percentage in our study group, and it was shockingly high. And so, with that being said, I would first check to make sure you don't have that, because you can do all the other things in the planet to sleep well, but if you have sleep apnea, it's a showstopper. Okay. None of the other things will necessarily help. Second thing would be is I would say, and I know this is going to sound silly, but it's to have the commitment to just look at yourself like a lab rat and say, okay, I need to study me and figure out what works best.
Yep.
So if I had to just point out simple things, it would be like go to sleep at the same consistent time every night, if at all possible. Now, for people like us, sometimes we can't.
Yep.
But I would say try to go to sleep as much as you can. Reduce your coffee intake, like stop after 11 o'clock or noon, just like stop.
Yep.
Reduce your alcohol intake after probably 6 in the evening. If you're going to bed at say 9 or 10.
Yep.
And I would just maybe reduce that. Taking a hot shower. So this is real funny. So one of the apps I had from a company called Sleep Score Labs was monitoring my sleep. And so it comes up and it says, Steve, if you turn your temperature down in your room 2 degrees, you'll probably sleep a lot better. And so we did. So our bedroom was like an ice box. It starts turning into an ice box at about 5 o'clock at night.
Yep.
But just reducing the temperature was good. And then taking a hot shower before I go to bed, and that encourages melatonin production. Okay. So these are really, really simple, no-cost, low-cost things that will make a world of a difference, but just consistency at bedtime and just the reduction of alcohol and coffee. Yep. And even light exercise. Go out and take your dog out for a 2 or 3 block walk, but just something to encourage your body to get a little bit tired. And then we kind of build, we build up there, but on the easy side, those are no cost things. And I will add one more, and that is National Geographic came out with a really good issue on sleep. And one of the illustrations in there show that if you're looking at your iPhone during that time when melatonin should be coming into your system. So for me, my melatonin, I believe, comes in somewhere between 7:30 and 8:30. So if you're looking at your iPhone, that will really kind of stop your melatonin production and delay it for close to 60 minutes. If you're reading an iPad, that could delay your melatonin production up to 90 minutes. So that's where I would say get the blue light filtering glasses if you're going to do that. And I still read my iPad at night, but I've got blue light filtering glasses on. And I'm now falling asleep on average within 10 minutes. Before I was falling asleep with an average of about an hour and a half.
Terrific. So then the counter, and I'm sure you've heard it from your boot camp, and you've got this coming up. You're about to go through a stadium renovation project at the Suns, which is going to produce a lot of work, and you're going to be doing it on the fly while the stadium is under use. Looking forward to the project itself, but how do you manage that as a big project and the stress that comes with it? And sleep, because is that the standard counter that you get? But Steve, I've got this big project.
Yeah. It's I'm glad I learned all what I did, because I had such bad habits that they really don't heal themselves. Yep. And when you jump into the stadium project, it's not going to make things better. It's going to make them exponentially worse. I can continue to keep my same routine. I have to make some adjustments. My fear is is that I'm motivated to keep my sleep well, because when you go through, and this is going to be my second major stadium training facility build and rebuild.
Yep.
I did it first with the Titans when we moved. And that is that poise and your ability to be nice and congenial is at a premium when you go through this, because a lot of folks are going to be underslept and overstressed. And so my motivation is to try the best I can to, to not let my human come out, so to speak, and to just weather this. And so, it's going to still be the same struggle, but I'm not sure, based on the NBA season or a WNBA season or anything else, it's going to be a lot more. It's just going to be more of it. And so, and a lot of the people who are within our IT department too, I have to really take a look at them. And when I feel they're being overtaxed, there's times I have to just tell them, shut it down, get home, rest up, come back in. And the more you do that, once again, my productivity and focus has went up with sleep. So I just am more motivated than ever to do that during this, because this is going to be a stressful time. Yeah.
I've just started playing and testing out a focus tracking tool, Foci, that effectively tracks when you're focused and distracted or fatigued, that kind of stuff. I've just started playing with it in the last couple of weeks, and
how's it coming?
It's still new. It was one of those ones off Kickstarter to try to see. But the idea is that when are you in that deep work? How long can you get into that deep work? And it is tracking breathing and that kind of stuff. But it is interesting. And then also when you're in either a conversation or something, or if stress is hitting you, whether it's reading an email or trying to do a report, it can again give you those pointers to say, pull back, notice it. So I look forward to chatting with you in 18 months or so, hearing how the project's going, and the fact that these signs and you've got a team that's been doing the project. Hopefully it moves a little bit more smooth. It's always going to present its problems, but hopefully it's a little bit more smoothly for you and the team.
Well, the problems you're going to run into is that you need to get a tailor, because I ended up having to either get my pants altered or buy a brand new set of clothes, because I lost 4 inches off my waist. And it was rather embarrassing, because I began to look like the bag lady when I would show up at work, and people were laughing that my pants are too crunched up, so they teased me into buying a new set of clothes. So,
well, that's a good problem to have. That's a good problem to have.
It sure is.
Well, Steve, I want to get to the Sports Geek closing 5. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
Yeah, I sure do. Now, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and I'm a big Detroit Pistons fan. Now they're my second team, naturally.
I'm a Pistons man from the Bad Boys days, so I'm very much there with you.
Yeah, I mean, Dennis Rodman, the whole crew. Yeah, they were fantastic. They fit the Detroit image. To be honest. But I went to a Detroit Pistons game back in 1975.
Okay.
My brother graciously brought me there. He came home from college and just said, "Hey, it's time to go to a Pistons game." They were playing at the Pontiac Silverdome at the time.
Yep.
And so it's kind of a weird venue, because they had to curtain off half the place, but. It was really kind of neat, and it was funny to think back years later that I'm working in the NBA, but at that point I would have had no clue whatsoever.
Crazy. And you would have obviously been to a lot of sports events in your time. Do you have a favorite food memory or a go-to food when you're at a sports event?
Honestly, if I exclude beer, because I'll tell you that's the number one.
Yeah.
But if I exclude beer, I'd probably say pizza. Pizza's really, really easy to eat. It's honestly, when you're sitting in seats and you're a little bit cramped in there, it is a really compact food, and you get all 4 food groups just about, a little bit more of one food group than the other. But you get all the food groups all together, and you can eat it without spilling all over yourself. So it's as somebody who's a little bit of a neat freak like I am, pizza I think I'd have to go with.
Terrific. What's the first app you open in the morning?
Well, there's 2 that I open. One, honestly, is my Apple Maps. When I'm driving to work, what's the best way to get to work?
Yep.
I've got quite a bit of a commute between here. It was normally about an hour and 10 minutes. And now I got an electric car, so I get privileged to ride in the high occupancy vehicle lane.
Yep.
So I now make it to work in 38 minutes, but I still turn on my Apple Maps. is the first thing. But the second one that I go with is audible.com.
Okay.
So I listen to a slew of weird and strange books that have nothing to do with technology, just to round myself out.
Yep.
I figure if I'm at a party one day and somebody's going to ask me about something, I need to be a little bit versed on just about everything. So I churn through a number of crazy audiobooks. And it helps to fill the time while I'm driving.
In the fiction, non-fiction, different, what type of styles do you find yourself listening to in Audible?
Yeah, most of them are going to be either scientific, going to be kind of scientific, type books as far as, like there's one I'm reading right now called The Body Keeps Score.
Yep.
And it's a really interesting book on traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
Or people who have PTSD, and it just shows how their body physiologically reacts to historical trauma, which has been, a wonderful one. And then naturally, Matt Walker's book, Why We Sleep, I had that one. Another one, The Power of Habit, Why We Do What We Do.
Okay.
So there's just lots of weird things that I go in there. I read a philosophy book once, and so my youngest son and I were talking philosophy one day, and he was like, how in the heck did you know this? Well, it's these stupid audiobooks. So
have you one that I've listened to was recommended by a former former guest was Everybody Lies, which is a really good deep dive into social data, and then what people say they like and things like that, but then what they actually do.
I would agree with that. Just even the title of it.
Yeah.
There's a good one from a gal named Angela Duckworth called Grit.
Yes, highly recommend that one as well.
Yeah, Grit is absolutely awesome. So it's and then there's the last one. Amy Cuddy had a book called Presence.
Okay,
bringing your best self to your biggest challenges. And that's also a really, really, really good one. So I would say, hey, if I were people, become well-versed. Pretend like you're very well-read, but just be well-heard.
Yes.
And listen to these audiobooks on the way to work if you have time.
Terrific. Well, I think you just answered the next question, which is who people should follow and why. Check out those books. Check out Matt Walker's book. And I agree. Angela Duckworth's book on grit is a really good read. I listened to it as well. It was an audible book for me.
And I'd throw Joe Rogan has a great podcast. He has all sorts of strange and weird guests on there. But Joe Rogan's also another really good guy.
He is effectively one of the most downloaded podcasters in the world, I think, these days, Joe Rogan, and absolutely prolific to be pumping him out every single day. Lastly, what social media platform is your MVP? What's the channel that's the best one for people to connect with you on?
Man, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so embarrassed about this. Probably Facebook is the biggest one, to be honest with you. But I've really cut my social media use back a little bit with going to sleep earlier.
Yep.
So Instagram, I'm on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. Those are probably the biggest ones. I have a presence out on Twitter. My wife tells me I'm a knucklehead and I should probably learn to use those a little bit better.
But you are on LinkedIn. And so people can connect with you there. So where is the best place for people to connect with you if they want to reach out, learn more about what you're doing, maybe learn more about the Sleep Boot Camp? What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, I would say if they want to reach out, they can reach out to me directly via email. It's going to be sreese@suns.com, and it's SREESE at suns.com. Yeah, feel free to reach out. Everybody deserves a good night's sleep. I'm more than happy to share any of that information. And, it's liberating. There's many parts of our lives that we cannot control. For most of us, or for a vast majority of us, sleep is one of those areas. And once you're able to get control, it just becomes addicting. It's a wonderful thing to have control of that, because once you get that, you have control of many other parts of your lives. But they can certainly reach out to me there. That would be no problem whatsoever.
Oh, terrific. Well, thank you very much for taking the time your afternoon. Hopefully doing a podcast interview doesn't affect your sleep tonight. And if anyone is listening to this late at night, I hope you've got your blue light glasses on and you're not having your coffee and you've put that glass of wine down and you get a restful night's sleep. So, Steve Reese, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. And you have got some wonderful material. I have read much of it, listened to much of it. It's been fantastic. So I feel absolutely honored to be here today. So I appreciate that.
New workshops on audience, content, distribution, valuation, and pitch following Sports Geek's Digital to Dollars process. Go to digitaltodollars.com.
Thanks again to Steve Reese. Please connect with him on LinkedIn or send him a tweet. Stephen Reese on the Twitter. But as I say always, please connect with my guests on LinkedIn. Tell them that you listen to the podcast and reach out and find out a little bit more and maybe get a good night's sleep. I know I've been making an effort, Steve, since our interview, since our catch-up, trying to get a few more Zs or a few more Zs, as I would say in this part of the world, and feeling a lot better for it. Before I wrap up, just want to talk to you a little bit about how digital to dollars is being adapted for different clients. For those of you who are listening for the first time, digital dollars is our process to bring revenue from your digital efforts. It's across 5 pillars: know your audience, know your content, know your distribution, know your value, and know your pitch. And so it works across for any sports rights holder, really, whether you're a league, team, stadium, coach, personality, or even just a business. One of the implementation we're doing at the minute is running digital to dollars as a webinar series for a bunch of teams, for an organising body, to bring them all up to speed. So it's to help them raise the bar, start looking at the way they're tackling digital. And really, for this case, for the online, it really does work well to bring people up to speed on what they should be doing. So yes, if you're interested in digital dollars, check it out, digitaltodollars.com. Happy to have a chat about how we can help you, whether you're early in your digital process and trying to figure out how to best reach your audience and connect with them and engage with them and understand which platforms you should be on. Or if you're more advanced and you've got a good content team and a digital team that's cranking out a lot of great stuff, and you need to help with that disconnect between your digital content team and your commercial team and help them to understand how to commercialize it. That's sort of the back end, the know your value, know your pitch. So reach out, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. Happy to discuss it. Don't forget, we've got new Q&A episodes coming out every Friday. What I do need from you listeners is questions. Getting questions coming in via LinkedIn messages, Twitter DMs, some via email. If you've got a question or you want me to dive in deeper on a topic that I may have discussed, whether it's something like that I've discussed with Steve Reese today or other topics, if you've got a question from an episode, please, it's a perfect chance to dive in a little bit deeper. Some of the questions so far have been on sponsorship, platforms, answered about TikTok, which, funnily enough, you put TikTok in the title and the episode starts trending in the Hong Kong iTunes charts. So that's always good. Had discussions about esports, sustainability. So those episodes are coming out every week. Trying to keep them under 10 minutes, make them easy and short. If you commute near the end of the week, you can send me a question, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. I would love to answer your questions. Until next episode, don't forget, you can support our podcasting efforts and our email newsletter efforts by going to our Patreon page, sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon, Patreon. If you misspell it and say patron, it'll also redirect you there, sportsgeekhq.com/patron or Patreon, either or. I'm here to help you with fat fingers. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Join Sports Geek Nation access to exclusive Slack and Facebook groups with regular Q&A sessions with Sean Callanan. Go to sportsgeeknation.com to join. Need help with your digital rate card? Not sure how to price your assets? Is there a disconnect between digital and commercial? That is where Sean works best, in digital divorce counselor mode. Book a time for a call with Sean to discuss the Sports Geek process. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call.
Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources.